Hello everyone, welcome back to Lazy Book Review, where I review the books I've read recently, but without putting all that much effort into it. Today I'm going to be reviewing Fyodor Dostoyevsky's Demons. This is also translated sometimes as The Possessed. I read this book because Jordan Peterson recommended it, and I see why. It's the title comes from the incident in the Bible and the Gospels where Jesus is expelling a demon from a demon-possessed man, and the demon says, our name is Legion because we are many. So it's not one demon, it's actually this sort of collective entity of many demons named Legion. And so Jesus tells them, get out of that man. And they point over to this herd of swine, and they say, Lord, at least let us go into that herd of swine instead of being banished into, I don't know, nowhere. And Jesus, I guess he says something like, yeah, just get out of them, go ahead. And so they jump into the herd of swine, and then the herd of swine jumps off a cliff, and they die. And this makes the townspeople really mad at Jesus because they just lost all their pigs. It's a weird occurrence in the gospel, but it is a appropriate title for this Dostoyevsky book, because this Dostoyevsky book is examining sort of mass delusion. He's examining how the radical socialist political movements of the 1870s that were really popular among the youth, how they go wrong, how they spread in popularity. He's examining what are the flaws in human psychology that allow these kind of morally bankrupt movements to gain popularity. And he's also examining the moral bankruptcy of the existing cultural order that those movements are overthrowing. Now, Dostoevsky died in 1881. I just looked that up before this video, so I did put a little effort in. I'm sorry. But I think he would have been horrified to know that these mass movements that he's critiquing in the 1870s actually rose to power and gained, in the Russian Revolution of 1914, we see the socialists gain power, and they take one of these visions of utopia that they were dreaming about in Dostoevsky's day, and they impose it on society. And Dostoevsky would not have been surprised to see that the result was horrific suffering. Millions of people died of starvation in the early days of the Russian Revolution. The first 40 years were characterized by extreme ideological oppression, secret police, massive imprisonments in Siberia. And the whole 70-year experiment or so was extremely oppressive, and I don't think he would have been surprised to see that the fruits of these radical materialist utopian ideologies was rotten. But he would have been horrified to know that they won and they got their time in the sun, despite his critiques of them, despite the warnings that were sounded. And I think that Demons is very topical for our day. In a lot of ways, Dostoevsky's portrait of 1870s provincial upper-class Russia feels a little current, feels current for the sort of mass delusions and utopian visions and youth movements of our day. Like, these things haven't gone away. And I don't know that there's not an easy answer for how to ground society in something that's not morally bankrupt, to resist, to be able to withstand the critique of these radical movements. Dostoevsky is religious. The other book that I read by him, The Brothers Karamazov, the protagonist in that one, the likable character, is the youngest brother, Alyosha, who wants to become a monk. And he is shown as the only one that really has a moral compass that is pointed in a good direction. Sort of there's a parallel in the Brothers Karamazov that shows us a bit of Dostoyevsky's worldview that I think is interesting. So in Brothers Karamazov, there's three brothers. The youngest one, Alyosha, I just talked about. The middle one is sort of a typical unreflective Dionysian Russian. He drinks a lot, he fights a lot, he takes after his father, he drinks away his money, and he is sort of portrayed in a mixed light. Like, he's not the ideal, but I think Dostoevsky has a certain warmth towards like this kind of archetypical Russian lout. And then there's the third brother, the middle brother, who is the intellectual. He's the scientific materialist. He's the atheist. I believe his profession is that he's a lawyer. And it's that brother that the devil appears to. It's that brother that has these visions where he is interrogated by the devil. And in demons, who are the possessed? Who are ground zero for the infection of these radical utopian visions? It's the young who have rejected religion. They're atheists. They're materialists. They make fun of and mock their elders' practices, their elders' religious practices, which have become empty even to the previous generation. Like, there's reasons to mock them. Like, the thing that they're replacing is a dead tree. It is not a vital culture. And this is not a story of good versus evil. This is a story of a dead, hypocritical culture being vulnerable to evil. And so the story takes place in provincial Russia, mostly among the upper class, and we get a sense, and it's really marked by a lot of status striving and a lot of insecurity. Like, you think of like the upper class of a hinterland province, like they're constantly like looking to Moscow and the major cities and the other European capitals as like where the real status is. Like, they're insecure. So whenever someone takes a trip to Paris or Geneva or Moscow and they come back, like there's a sense of, they carry with them a sense of like of status, and other people want to be around that. The older generation that is in this book, they're constantly speaking in phrases of French. Like, that's the verbal tick of the older generation, and that's their attempt to like show how hip and cool they are by, I am fluent in French. In fact, I interject French throughout my speech, to the point where you get they sound a little buffoonish, and you get this one character, I think his name was Stepan, talking to when he does encounter a member of the lower class, he can't stop himself from speaking in French, and the lower class person is just like, I don't know what you're getting at, man. So, and then when the younger generation, whom has been completely neglected and by the older generation, comes back into town with these socialist ideas, like, at first all the older class sort of sucks up to them. Like, they're cool, they're bad, and those status collecting, hobnobbing, networking, brown-nosing instincts don't go away. They want to get in the good side with the young people, and they want some of that aura of bad boy mischief, coolness to rub off on them, but they really can't hang because they're not as nihilistic they're not ready to embrace the utter nihilism that the younger generation has embraced. As far as the experience of reading Demons, I find Dostoevsky to be a little hard. My sense of pacing is shaped by modern pop literature, like sci-fi, fantasy, modern movies, and I find, or even modern, like, fine literature or something, our sense of pacing is much faster nowadays than it was with the audience that he was writing for. So sometimes I find that I just have to slog through. The worst example of this was in Brothers Karamazov. There's a scene in the middle of the book. It takes up about 9% of the length, I believe, where the older brother is sort of carousing, has a night of wild carousing on stolen money before he knows he's going to get caught. And literally like 9% of the book is describing sort of this manic debauchery of this one night. And my eyes just kind of glazed over. I'm looking ahead, I'm like 10, 20 pages ahead. I'm like, oh, still going on. I guess I just kind of have to slog through. Like there might be something important here and I don't want to miss it. But eventually you get to the parts of the book where things are moving again. And Demons has a little bit of that too. You have to have your slogging muscles ready. The other thing about reading Dostoyevsky is there's some controversy as to whether you should read him in the winter or the summer. Those are very different experiences. So he's kind of a bleak writer, and this book is bleaker than most. There's no really righteous character in it. There's no, protagonist per se. And Russian winters are bleak things, and Russia is a bleak thing. And so you could read Dostoyevsky in the winter to accentuate the bleakness and to make it more of a immersive experience, or you can read him in the summer to sort of give yourself some protection from the unending bleakness of the Russian landscape. So I'll leave that up to you. I think if you tend to be depressive, read him in the summer, and if you tend to be pretty cheerful, read him in the winter to get the stronger experience. So overall, I'm happy I read Demons. I can see why it was recommended, and I think it's a topical and an appropriate warning for our day. If we don't learn from history, we'll repeat it, and it's kind of a prophetic book. It's remarkable that Dostoyevsky had his finger on the pulse of what was going on before it really achieved its climax like he did. So I guess I had like a pretty orthodox reading year. I read Dostoyevsky and the other books that I reviewed last time, Laurus and The Way of a Pilgrim, and that's where my mind's been. So just a reminder, there's another channel named Chamomile TV that's trying to take my name, and they're beating me in subscriptions, so please subscribe to my channel if you like my content, and I will continue making videos so we can be the #1 Chamomile TV. All right, peace everyone.